good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming out on such bleary weather to hear our presentation, our very exciting presentation regarding the referendum that's coming up for a vote on December 10th. My name is Margaret Contaldi. I'm the acting superintendent for anyone who does not know me. Thank you for coming down to the front, everybody. I'd like to welcome board members that are here, the PTO presidents that responded to my emails, parents, Dr. Shallop for hosting us here and allowing us to have this presentation, and residents. The panel for this evening's presentation includes the following. We have Jennifer Fisher, who's the supervisor of 21st Century Skills, Dan Mashord, the business administrator, Jean Perriantoni, an educational facility planner extraordinaire, as well as the CEO at SSP Architects, Gail Polakowski, Chief Academic Officer Secondary, and the purpose for tonight's meeting is to give everyone the tools and information that you need to best understand what we're setting out to do. It's been a year in planning, getting to this point, so we're all very excited to be sharing this information with you. Specifically, the public presentation, our agenda is here for you to see. We have it broken down into 4 distinct areas. One is the need, why we are doing what we're doing, the vision, where we see ourselves heading and why we need to go there, district actions, both past and present, that have gotten us to be where we are today, and then the plan, how it is that we need your support to get out and vote on December 10th. So with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to our first presenter, Jean Perriantoni. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Margaret, and good evening, everybody. We're here tonight to talk about capacity in the Edison Public Schools. That is the #1 concern, #1 challenge, and #1 issue that needs support from the community. How we got there, and I should mention that any picture that shows kids' faces, it's an internet picture, it's not your district. We're going to be showing a lot of pictures that are from your district that are empty because we made it, we took them without the students in it, but we also have visions that are also from the internet. So we just wanted to just clarify that as a matter of point. When I mentioned the capacity, I mentioned what is the district facing. Right now, you are currently over capacity. In other words, the amount of space and facilities and classrooms and really space around every single table and chair is inadequate for the number of students. That's been verified by the State Department of Education. That's been calculated using various formulas that the state provides as part of the regulations. And the reason why that's important is really going to be discussed by Gail and by Jen in terms of why does space matter? Why does, having a limit on the number of students in any particular room really does matter? So you have congested classrooms, but it's not only the classrooms. You're congested in the hallways. You're congested in the assembly spaces. You're congested in course spaces. You're congested in spaces that had to go offline in order to get another classroom in, programs for art, for music that had to be squeezed out. So that congestion really impacts the delivery of educational services, and that's the reason why capacity is so important. The other thing that happens is that if you have overcrowding and you have congestion, then there is an impact that's felt throughout the community. It's not just felt in the school buildings, but there's a ripple effect that happens when you have schools that are basically inadequate in the amount of services they can provide or hamstringed by the type of programs and kind of active learning that they can provide. So those are components that can really affect property value. And so that's something that the district wants to prevent because it has a long, rich history and is very proud of the fact that it's really the premier school district in Middlesex County. And then you also have safety and discipline concerns, and I'll let Gail and others talk a little bit about that. But that naturally happens when you have kids brushing against each other in crowded hallways, when you have them basically fighting for a seat or to get in line in order to have their food service in time. You have issues that come out that's related directly to space. How was the space calculated? One of the things the district has is a demographer that's been working for the district for the past 10 years. And so we had Sundance Associate update the demographics so that we're projecting not only what's happened in the past, we'll take a look at that, but also what's happening in the next 5 years and even the 5 years after that. And as you can see by this gold line, this is your history. This is 22 years of history and projection, and it's still going up. Edison is still a developing community. There's housing turnover. There's housing development happening. You have students coming in. And you can see a couple of lines for it. And you can see that what happened in 2007 was starting a real rapid increase, especially during the years 2012 and 2017, your most immediate past history. This district increased by over 13%. Its facilities increased by about 2%. So you can see there was a gap that happened during that critical period of growth. And that's one reason why a referendum plan, something where we go outside the annual district operating budget and ask for additional money to deal with that gap, that component. Another way to look at it is what's in the blue is your past history. This is now a bar chart with the numbers. The red is your current 5-year projections, and the green part is what's happening in the next 5 years of projections. And then there's 2 horizontal lines. I just want to draw your attention to it. This red line that's on the bottom is something that's calculated by the State Department of Education, and it's a formula based on funding. And it really is associated with the approval process, is associated with any kind of state aid that's given to you. It's a kind of a strange formula that really is not related to actual student count. The purple line, however, is related to seat count in the buildings. This is also regulated by the State Department of Education, and they have, again, some guidelines for that, but it allows for the district to name how they're using every single space. So it's a combination of basically working with the school principals, going in, visiting the schools, marking down which is a first grade, which is a second grade, which is now being used for this. It used to be art, but now it's a new 4th grade classroom, updating the plans for every of the schools, counting the number of seats in it, and then actually calculating it based on some of the guidelines that the State Department promulgates. It says for good education, you should try to have 21 students or under for your primary grades. You should have 23 students or under for your early education elementary grades. You should have 24 or under for your secondary, all the way up through high school. Got to tell you, that's not what's here in this district. This district has exceeded. The way they see all these spaces above this purple line, these are kids in the school system. They're being educated. Technically, they're in overcrowded conditions. So that's where the change is that you put those few extra kids in every single classroom. You put those extra kids in a room that used to be a support space, and now it's serving as small group instruction. You put children in every square inch of the building, and that's really what all those kids are being served above that purple line. And that really is going to be the theme of it, because what we're going to be going into is now to show you what you do have for facilities. Now, again, I mentioned that we have no students being shown, so just imagine if these spaces were populated by students. And for that, I'll let Gail take it from here and kind of describe what she knows very well happens in this district.
All right, thank you. Okay, so these pictures are pictures of Edison classrooms, all part of our Edison schools. These are not from websites. So you can see that we have the trailers. Just trailers in and of themselves, not the best place to have kids. The fact that they have to walk outside in order to get to the trailers is already an issue, depending on the weather. Et cetera. So this is an acquired class inside a trailer. And believe it or not, that's a great picture. If you were there in person, you can't believe what it would look like with kids.
standing on that top riser. Their heads are almost hitting the ceiling, and the poor choir director is bouncing in front of them because one side can't see her, the other side can't see her. There's just absolutely no room to squeeze these kids into there, but there's no place else for that class. Here's another example of a trailer, and I don't know if you could just tell how far back a student may be from the teacher and the board. And yes, the teacher can walk back and forth, but it's so crowded in there. When you put kids in their materials, it's not so easy for them to get around, so there's not a lot of movement during the class. And for the teacher to walk back and forth, they certainly do it a little bit, but the students cannot see what's going on the board. This is a library. It was a closet converted into a library. I'm not sure why the rocking chair is there, other than if a person was as old as this library, they would need a rocking chair. It's about the only furniture they can fit in there. And this is typical. Look at the high school libraries. They were so large. Edison High School Library was tremendous, and it just keeps getting cut into. For dance studio, for classrooms, they need this space. And now you walk in the media center, it is not even half the size of its original size. We need to give the students space to work. And certainly having a library in a closet is just unacceptable. Hallways are being used for space because there's nowhere else for this specialized instruction or individual attention. You could see if there's any alcove, any cutout in a hallway, because you couldn't have the furniture in the hallway, students barely fit when they're passing. So any alcove, there's table and chairs, makeshift place for teachers to work with their students. This is the auditorium you're sitting in. You can see how old it is. You can see there's seats missing. We can't even replace them because they no longer make the parts. So this has to be new seating. As each one breaks, there's just one less seat for a student. This is where the biggest space where students come for study halls because there's nowhere else to put them. So if you can imagine hundreds of kids in here trying to do their studying, yes, we want to give them the time, but is it really conducive to quiet studying? Absolutely not. Parents have come up to us during the performance, during senior awards. How come you didn't put the air conditioning on? I'm dripping. I can't even sit in here. There is no air conditioning. They just assume we didn't turn it on. There's absolutely, the temperatures in here are ridiculous when the weather is warm outside. These are offices. And you could say, all right, well, it's not about students. These are about the adults. But how many of you would want to work in these spaces all day? And it really sets a tone because you do have parents coming into your office. You have students coming into your office. It has an impact when you see that these are the conditions, that it's not a comfortable place to be, again, with the temperatures and the space. This is a cafeteria food service coming out of a closet. Sorry, back that up. Again, this is closet space taken away, so then the storage is in the classroom. So now you have crowded classrooms, nowhere to put the materials. They wind up in the classroom. Here's where they're storing the violins. Imagine the money put into these instruments and the care, so they're by the windows because there's nowhere else to store them. So the dampness is not good for the instruments. The fact that they could get knocked over very easily, misplaced. This is in the cafeteria. Again, storage is a problem. And when you have nowhere to put it, you just start putting it in the spaces you do have, which are classrooms. This is great. This is what the halls look like all the time, okay? A bell rings, kids move out in the hall. Literally, at certain spots in the building, you will stand still. Just stand still. You can't move. And slowly, all right, the kids are moving off in different directions, finding their way, and eventually they make their way to class. But it is very difficult to get from one side of the building to the other, sometimes just from one classroom down the end of the hall. The halls are crowded. The kids are on top of one another. The rules have changed to accommodate this. No backpacks, because there's just not enough room. It's not safe. Kids can't fit in the hall with their backpacks, okay? So even rules have changed to try to accommodate it, but we just keep adding kids. Here's a classroom. Just look how close those desks are to one another. They're on top of one another. And now a teacher's supposed to get around to meet them, and that's without kids. It looks crowded. All right? And we all know about our space, how important space is to us. And when you put kids on top of one another, and then you put them in heated classrooms on top of one another, these are not good conditions. They're not conducive to learning. They're not good for behavior. Discipline issues start to increase because of it. You see things that happen that normally wouldn't be happening when the climate and the conditions are good for our students. All right, just another example of how the desks are up against a wall right on top of one another. Cafeteria. We had to eliminate chairs in most of our cafeterias. They're benches, so you could squeeze as many kids as possible at a table. In this school, and I'm sure in others, the kids are actually, it's too overcrowded in the cafeteria. They're eating in classrooms. So they go to the cafeteria, get their food, and then they have to go to a classroom to eat because there's not enough space in the cafeteria. There's the art class. The teacher has all her supplies moving from space to space on a cart. And again, just storage issues. It's all about the lack of space. And even though we may be showing you places that aren't with the classrooms, everything impacts the classroom. As we fill all those other spaces and we have to take away storage just to find room to put teachers and kids, it impacts everything else. And I'll pass this over to Jen for where we're going with the vision.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Fisher. I am the supervisor of 21st Century Skills here in Edison. I want you to take a look at that number right now, 2,919 students. When we think of a number that large, we think about the size of a high school. That's actually the number of students in our district that are without a seat right now. These students that are eating lunch in their classrooms, students that are having instruction in closets, in hallways, being served food in the hallways. We don't need one new school. Even a school the size of J.P. Stevens wouldn't be enough to accommodate 2,919 students. And our district has done an amazing job of trying to come up with short-term solutions. We have 17 trailers, we have converted closets. We've tried to do the best with what we have. But think about it. If you were to drive down to the Jersey Shore, would you get in a horse and buggy? Probably not. You'd make it there, but it would take a really long time. There are better ways to do things. There are more efficient ways. And those are the ideas that we need to tap into at this moment, right? We're playing records in a world of MP3s. These schools were built in the 1950s, and we just haven't been able to keep up with the growth. How do I know this? I was a student in this very building. I stood on this very stage in the 1990s delivering a speech to an audience almost as big as this one when I was running for class vice president. I came back to this district because it did so much for me. It meant so much to me, and I wanted to give back. And it's our time now to give back to the students that we have here in 2019. When we talk about 21st century learning and 21st century skills, we have to talk about environment. This referendum would allow us to transform our classrooms into real 21st century learning spaces where students can collaborate and they can innovate and they can problem solve, and our teachers can use best practices to meet the needs of every single student in the classroom. Think about the ability of being able to pull small groups, use portable whiteboards, use flexible seating to really meet the needs of every student in the class. What about our cafeteria? Ms. Polakowski just talked about how our students are getting lunch and going into classrooms to eat on their own with a small group. That's not what lunch is supposed to be. I have a high school son. Lunch is probably his favorite part of the day. It's when they have downtime. It's when they can socialize. It's when they get to be a kid. It's impossible to be a kid when you are sandwiched one next to the other, like sardines, barely finding a seat at the bench. This would allow us to provide our students with a space where they can be kids in this century. Common areas. Think about places like Starbucks. We go there to congregate, we go there to do work, we go there to collaborate. Imagine providing spaces like that in our schools, giving students opportunities to work with others in spaces that mirror the offices of New York City. I have had the opportunity to go and visit the Google offices. This is what they look like. The Google offices look like what our 21st century environments could become. Spaces where students can sit together, where they can problem solve and develop the skills that they need for success in the workplace. The media centers. Media centers have evolved. I don't know about you, but I remember Mrs. Walker teaching me how to use the Dewey Decimal System to walk through, and you're laughing, to select books. We are no longer the keepers of books in our library. Yes, we have those opportunities for students. However, they are so much more. We need to teach our students how to find the information, how to use the resources that they are given, how to be good digital citizens, and the Media Center is the perfect place for building those 4 C's of 21st century learning, right? Giving the students the power to communicate, to collaborate, to think critically, and to be creative. Corridors and circulation. Ms. Polakowski shared a picture of students sandwiched in a hallway, and that struggle is real. I am in the secondary buildings each and every day, and let me tell you, you do not want to get caught in the hallway during passing. These students have 4 minutes to get from one class to another, and with congestion the way it is, it's almost an insurmountable task. They are now forced, because without backpacks, because there's no room, they are carrying books for their entire school day because there's just no time for them to get to their lockers. That's not the way high school is supposed to be. Our high school and our middle school students, they do need that downtime. Just that movement to get up and move between classes is so valuable in activating their brains. And movement, there's so much research that points to the power of movement in getting kids to process information and getting ideas to stick. When they are struggling and trying to break through crowds, they don't have that downtime to reset. Our classroom spaces need to meet the needs of our 21st century students. These are just images that we've pulled from different websites, but they are what's possible. Our classrooms, when you walk in, still look like they did when I was here in the 1990s, right? We still have students sitting in rows because there's no room to do anything else. My husband's a teacher in this district, and he's been a teacher in this district since 2000. His class sizes now have almost doubled from what they were. His smallest class size is 30 students per class. 30 students per class. And it's not just the number of students, it's the space itself. How are we supposed to work with small groups, meet with our students, and really target what they need when we're crowded into such a small space? The gym and fitness centers. We have the opportunity to bring state-of-the-art gym and fitness facilities to our students. Social, emotional learning is a huge component of what we do in our schools, and physical fitness should be an important aspect of that, giving our students the tools they need to make good decisions and to lead positive lives through physical activity. Our science labs, these should be the hub of our school. Our STEM programs, our science programs, our engineering, this is the future. We are preparing our students for jobs that don't even exist yet. Our spaces aren't keeping up with that. Multi-purpose rooms should have a multi-purpose. Right now, our multi-purpose rooms have been relegated for other things because we don't have any other space. Multi-purpose rooms are being used for cafeterias, they're being used for classroom spaces, they're being used to teach our elective programs. We need to bring those back so we have additional spaces for students to collaborate and meet. Site and field improvements. If you have been to any of our athletic fields, particularly the baseball fields at Edison High School, you've seen the shoddy condition of what's happening. We're waiting for injuries to happen. We're not doing what's right for our kids. We need to make sure that we are putting them on surfaces and we are putting them on fields that are safe. The goal is a seat for every child. This can really only be done by expanding the 2 high schools, 1 middle school, and 3 elementary schools. We need to make improvement at the 6 neediest of our buildings in order to help move our district forward. The ultimate goal is to benefit the kids, to benefit our community. I came back here to teach for a reason. Edison is an amazing place, and other people are starting to find out. We were named one of America's 10 best places to grow up by US News and World Report, and I can say that that's true because I was a product of the Edison schools, and it was a great place to grow up and learn. It was ranked one of the top 4 places to live in New Jersey by Money Magazine, the 28th as one of the most livable small cities in the entire US by CNN's Money Magazine. And it's the proud home of J.P. Stevens, my alma mater, which was ranked 35 of all New Jersey high schools in 2019. There's a need to relieve overcrowding, and we need to invest in the future and invest in our students.
Thank you, Jen, and you can see why she's in charge of the 21st century learning in this district. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. And I'm going to call Dan up to help present on this next slide because we're going to be talking now. We've just heard the needs, we just heard about the vision, so we're now in the district actions, this moment in time of what we really formulated the plan. And before I go into detail for the plan, we wanted to say, what's the history in the district? And no one better that's been here throughout this history than Dan to talk about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you must be thinking, how come previous boards haven't done something about this overcrowding problem? Well, believe me, we've tried. We're going back to 2002, as you can see here. At that time, we had Dr. Caprero as superintendent, and he had a vision. He wanted full-day kindergarten. We passed that's the last one we passed, as you can see, for anything other than Monroe, the Monroe School, which I'll get into. But 2002, we did pass a referendum for $12 million. We put an addition on all these schools that had a kindergarten, whether it was either a 1, 2, or 3-room addition to the schools, and we got full-day kindergarten implemented into Edison in 2003. And we had it in until 2010. But in the meantime, we did try to go out for, in 2005, 7, 8, as you can see, 51 million, 79 million. And at those times, we tried to put additions on various schools where we had overcrowding problems or we needed some infrastructure improvements. But we heard a lot of people from the public saying, well, you're putting it on these 5 schools, I'm not getting anything out of it, so they got defeated. So what we did in 2010, we went out for addition on all the schools. But that went down too. It's $166 million, but even with that, of course, in 2010, Governor Christie got into office. He took 5% of our budget away, and at that time, we had to make major cuts in our programs, and we ended up losing our full-day kindergarten that we had for 7 years. And when Dr. O'Malley got in, one of his visions was put everything back that we cut, except the only problem with that is it wasn't so much the money, but now all of a sudden those classrooms are full with 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade kids now. We don't have the space for the kindergarten anymore, so now we need additions to put the full-day kindergarten back in place. The only other one we passed was in March of 2015. I'm sure you all remember in 2014, James Monroe School burnt down. We had to replace it. We were getting insurance money, but at that time the insurance money was only going to be $9 million according to what they were giving us. That we needed to, it was somewhere in the range of $20 to $23 million we were anticipating at that time. So we had to put a referendum out because we couldn't put a bid out for that school until we had the funding in place. And until we got some commitment from the insurance company that they were going to cover it, we had to go out for a referendum. So we went out for a referendum for $18.6 million, and we actually got it passed. But our promise to the public was, if we get the insurance money, we will pay it back to the taxpayers if we get this bond passed, and we did. However, we did settle with the insurance company. We got $23.6 million from them. So we were able to cover the cost of the school, so we didn't use one dime of that bond, even though we did pass it. So what we're trying to tell you is we're in desperate need of this new bond, obviously for the very reasons we're talking about. The overcrowding has only gotten worse, and we're trying to do something about it, and without trying to get some additions to the schools, it's going to continually get worse based on the demographer's report. Especially in the high schools. The secondary schools are really going to be overcrowded because our elementary schools, even though he's thinking that it's going to slow down in the elementary levels, as those larger classes come up through the grades, they're going to get into the middle schools and high schools, and it's going to be a lot worse than it is now. Okay?
Thank you, Dan. I want to talk a few minutes about the long-range facility plan because that was really the origin of this referendum plan. Back in the fall, and really literally in October, that's when my firm, SSP Architects, was hired to do an update to the long-range facilities plan. This is a requirement that the state has for all school districts to do it every 5 years. And one of the things that the Board of Education charged our firm with is to look in particularly hard at that capacity. That's when the update to the demographics happened. And during that process, and this was a 6-month process in which there were multiple visits to the schools. And when I say visits to the schools, I personally got to know every single school principal several times, several meetings, as well as there were people from my staff that was there meeting with the maintenance, the key maintenance people and staff. So we were there not only looking at how the spaces were being used educationally, but also, peeking behind the doors, lifting up ceiling tiles, looking at the boiler room and the capacity of that. From this information, there was a lot of data gathered, and we had input from a committee that was formed, that was the Overcrowding Task Force Committee, that had been studying the issue of overcrowded. So they gave input in terms of what they would like to see, the vision, the goals, and the issues that they were well aware of that had been happening the previous 5 years. We had presentations for them in order to garner what is what we should be comparing our school district to, the 21st century learning components. From that component, we looked at a lot of scenarios. So the referendum plan that's been selected by the board is seen as the most affordable, the most efficient, and the most targeted at benefiting all the students in the district. And I say that because some of the things that there was looked at was the idea of building one new school. And that would benefit those that go to the new school, but not necessarily every single student. Every single student will benefit because they all go to the 2 high schools, and there's major, major improvements. In fact, the bulk of the money is targeted at the 2 high schools, and that's how every student will really benefit within the district from that. At the same time, we also looked at grade reconfiguration. We looked at saying, okay, maybe we should be moving the 5th grade out of the elementary so we have that room for the full-day kindergarten. Let's put them on the middle school sites. Well, 2 of the middle school sites in the district could handle additions and do perfectly well with a larger scope. 2 of the middle schools cannot, and that's Hoover and Wilson. Both schools are landlocked, both in site as well as the capacity that they're dealing with, so it made it very difficult to have that as just a reconfiguration. We also really listened very closely to the idea of that neighborhood connection to the schools they've been going, both historically, traditionally, and the ties, and how redistricting, when you change grade configuration, you have a reshuffling of all the students, how that is not something that's really much valued in this district. Instead, what's valued is that neighborhood connections that you have. So that's why I'm saying that the referendum plan, after taking all those factors in, listening, having that dialogue back and forth, that's how we came up to selecting 6 of the neediest schools in the district to add on to. The 2 most critical are the high schools because they have the biggest capacity gap to address. 1 middle school. 1 middle school actually fell out of that because that was the most needy, and that's Wilson. So we had to do something rapidly for Wilson, separate from the referendum, which I'll talk about next. And then we also looked at 3 elementary schools that have the most trailers, the most overcrowded conditions. That's how we came up with the 6. Are there other needs at other schools? The long-range plan has captured that. That's in the website, that's in the district. So as the district has funds in their annual budget, their operating capital, some of the other needs at the other schools can be addressed over time. That has been documented as part of the process. One of the things I also wanted to emphasize is what has the district done? The district has taken, in addition to using every square inch of the buildings, they have actually invested in some facilities. Recently, in 2019, this fall, there were a total of 19 new classrooms that came online, both with modular additions being added. One for targeting the early education students and the special education students at FDR, the Early Learning Center, and the other at Wilson Middle School, which basically is so far over capacity that it really was going to have to lose every single specialized instructional space in the building, taking not only the media center offline and subdivided into classrooms, taking off gyms and cafeterias offline just for classroom space. That's how desperate Wilson became. So those things had to be funded through the annual budget and capital reserve for that to be addressed immediately. And that's why I really wanted to emphasize that the district has been taking action. What it can fit in, they've been doing. But if you do the math, when this referendum is proposing close to 99 new instructional spaces for the district, if they can handle like 9 a year, within their budget, that would take 11 years. The kids are already here. They don't have 11 years to build 9 classrooms here and there every single year within the budget. That's why we have to go outside the budget and look at a referendum plan for that. I'm just going to give you a sneak preview of the costs, since you've been waiting so patiently, because I do want to get into the actual technical details of the plan. And that's to say that the number is big, but this is a big district, and it is $189.5 million. I do want to emphasize that there is state aid relief for debt service relief, that if you do a long-term debt bonding and have bond repayments, the state does provide a share of that, which is approximately 16% that we calculated. And so the local share out of that number is $158.5 million. Now, as some of your board members would say, this is a budget that we're establishing for the work to be done. If our additions and new construction and renovations come in at less cost than projected within the budget, that money gets turned back to the taxpayers. We don't even have to go out for those final bonds. So these are kind of cap maximum numbers for the budget that we have to work within, but anything, it could be less than that. And that's always the goal for it. But based on that overall number and based on a 30-year bond, the idea of having long-term debt, the calculation on an average assessed value of the home is $18.67 a month, or what was it, 61 cents a day is what I think Margaret mentioned. The assessed value of the home, and there's a number up there, $179,600, that has to come from your tax bill. So it's not your market value of your house. Your house might be worth $400,000, but your assessed value and what you pay taxes on that tax bill is the number you have to look on for with this. We're going to be talking later about other sources of information, and one of the things that they have online in places are a tax calculator, that if you put in your assessed value number, you'll be able to actually calculate the true cost to you for the referendum on a house-by-house basis. We'd been talking that this is a 4-point plan throughout, and I just wanted to, again, reorient it for the 4 points. It's addressing that growth, that overcrowding conditions. It's planning for the future change as well, and that includes the idea of full-day kindergarten at the elementaries. It's upgrading the safety, security, and the access that's going to happen, and also improving all that educational support spaces. Those are really the 4 points that this plan is addressing. And these are some of the other benefits that happen from a referendum plan. And we talked about property value and making sure that it doesn't depreciate, but is enhanced by investments in the school district. The idea of you're getting a total of 96 classrooms, 11 science labs. So that, as you can see, that's 107 instructional rooms, plus 15 specialized areas. That includes spaces for the gym and other components that are specialized, art and music. So you really get a total, and this is between new construction and renovations, 122 rooms are being touched by this referendum. And that's one reason why the number is big, because we're really doing a comprehensive approach to this referendum. We're also looking at what happens with the utilities. We talked about everything that's new or renovated will get a new HVAC system associated with that, because there's new ventilation requirements. The state, there's all sorts of code requirements for that. The electrical power capacity has to be enhanced for today's standards. So those utilities will be upgraded, and that includes air conditioning. Spaces like this. This room will be totally renovated, gutted, and enhanced. And now I just want to I'm going to go quickly through the schools just to give you a little taste of what's going on, as well as to note that This information will be posted online, so you'll be able to study this in detail. We also have posters that are out in the lobby of every single school that really shows the floor plans. And I'll try and highlight some of the key components. On this aerial, this is an existing aerial for Edison High School, and those bright blue colors, those are wetlands, and that's one of the factors that we have to kind of take into account, that you obviously can't build near it, and has implications on what happens with the drainage and the other site improvements on a site. This is a proposed rendering of a new entrance, new two-story wing at Edison High School. And when we were looking at some of the yearbooks at Edison, we saw that that front of that building has not changed since 1959 or 58 when it was actually constructed. This is going to be breathing a new life and vitality to your, I would say your original high school in the district, Edison High School. So this is really a key component of the referendum. And also, we're going to have a revised driveway, so you could actually get two vehicles passing each other without being squeezed. Right now, if the buses are there, you can't barely squeeze by. We'll have all that changed in addition to additional parking component. The purple and the yellow in all these diagrams are what we're touching. The purple represents new square footage, new additions, and the yellow are spaces within the existing walls of the building that we'll be touching, renovating, or doing a change of use. So that's true for all the diagrams. The gray, the light gray is existing pavement and parking and access areas. The darker gray areas are what's being proposed as changes, enhancements, additional parking for it. And the same thing with the green. The light green is pretty much your fields and play areas, and any area that shows a slightly darker green, that's what we're touching or renovating or doing turf or doing drainage and other improvements for it. In order to get more parking at Edison, we have to relocate tennis courts, and that's what we're doing. And actually that solution you'll see is also true for J.P. Stevens. When we look at the floor plans themselves, I mentioned that the front wing, that new entrance, is a two-story. And in these diagrams, the blue color is classrooms, the yellow gold color is kind of specials. So we have a front addition that's really the classroom, the guts of the classroom that's being added to the school. And in the back wing, we have the new main gymnasium. The existing gym at Edison is much smaller than the one at J.P. Stevens, and it is actually undersized for the size of students that it currently exists. So basically, they really cannot have any kind of, not only gym classes that fit well in there, but even if they're doing kind of co-curricular athletic events, they are below standard for a high school gym. So one of the ideas is that we're going to convert that gym space into their second gym and build a new main gym in the back. We're also adding a couple, laser pointer right up here. We have some science labs that are being added next to the latest wing that was added for the science. So one of the reasons that Gail was emphasizing the idea of the circulation and how much time and the overcrowding, and Jen mentioned also that. The reason why this addition looks like it's being added on in pieces, bits and pieces, is because to improve the functional operation of the existing schools, and is to put facilities and resources strategically next to what's existing. In other words, enhance what's there, put the science with the science, so you have that contiguous. Put the academics in the media center where you want that to be with the academic classrooms, and make it so that other spaces are renovated so they can add on in kind. For example, in the center of the school, there's a lot of cross-hatching components in this red area for the office, as well as areas along here. We'll be able to make those spaces college career centers that really work with the guidance that's in that center area. We'll be able to expand the office so the offices are not in those little closets scattered throughout the building, but you have a revised office area. So that's one reason why you end up touching the building in various places. It's to enhance how it operates as a high school, make it the most efficient, and to provide new corridor links so students have choices. They all don't have to essentially go in this main central. Now there'll be circulation routes that allow them to do other things, new circulation routes, so they will be able to have choices when they pass as opposed to standing still when they're passing. And that was very important at both Edison as well as J.P. Stevens to do that. This is J.P. Stevens, and somebody, I think your current principal asked me, which was the most challenging school to work on in this plan. Bar none, it was J.P. Stevens. And I have to say that part of the reason is how much is wetlands completely around the site, which really precluded, and this is showing the active wetlands, but you also have this parking that's underwater whenever it rains. So you have the other parts of the wetlands. It's not technically wetlands, but it's very wet. And so we really had to strategically place the additions in areas, in really 2 points of the building that we could basically build upon for that. This is actually a view of what is going to be a very compact footprint of a 3-story addition going in on the rear side, and which would set up a secondary entrance. So this is not a new main entrance. The main entrance will stay at J.P. Stevens where it is, but this is a rear entryway that will be linking the new classrooms, as well as we have some fitness areas and auxiliary gym areas in the back of the high school. And it'll be right next to where we relocated a lot of the parking. So there'll be an expanded parking area that'll collect the students from this component. And the reason why I say it had to be 3 stories is because we didn't have enough land to spread this out for 2 stories. We literally needed to go up a 3rd story and have an elevator and have all the barrier-free access in order to fit the sheer number of classrooms that we have to provide at J.P. Stevens. So these big spaces are the new physical education, fitness areas, some locker room areas. We have a media center relocated from the center area out to this, and this will be tied in with all the classrooms that wrap around this L, and this actually literally comes up to the 3-story component. And the reason why, again, you have purple in 3 places is, again, that strategic infill development. This is the area that we could actually build that massive 2- and 3-story construction. This is the area that wants to expand all the science, because we have math and science at this area of the building. So we have a 2-story component that's going to be building 6 new science labs, 3 and 3 stacked up, putting them in that, and creating a new circulation loop here. So again, very important that we have this ability to circulate at this side of the building strategically for J.P. Stevens with that. The reason why we are actually giving up the media center, which is in a beautiful location in the school, is because we don't have enough cafeteria space. We wanted to keep the kitchen where it is, and the guts of the building are all in here, and not touch that, not have to build a new kitchen, but to actually then have the existing cafeteria work, which is going to be a cafeteria common space, converting the media center. And it was actually cheaper for us to move the media center out and put the other cafeteria commons in the area that can be serviced by that. We'll have satellite delivery of food service here, but it really will be cooked and prepared in this location and brought to these locations, so we'll be able to feed it from that emphasis. And I mentioned we're still going to be renovating and just updating the entrance to, which is going to stay here. Here's our auditorium, here's our main gym. That's all going to be renovations. And right here is our extra music, our orchestra music room that currently is so woefully inadequate in size. It's really just an ordinary classroom that's trying to accommodate the orchestra program. And I know you have an award-winning music program at J.P. Stevens. And this just shows it in a little bit greater detail. And this will be on site along with the information on the particulars for the building. In terms of Adams, again, this is the school that's kind of right behind and connected with J.P. Stevens. This school had special needs in terms of capacity. It's one of the schools that basically lost its library this year. Its library is currently being used as an auxiliary gym. So its little library resources went into a closet and had that little extra area, because I can point to it. This area right now, that we put a little wall in here, actually the district did that, put a little wall in here, that's the media center, and all of this is an auxiliary gym. That's what's being proposed for construction, and we're looking to put the new auxiliary gym next to the existing main gym, and so the whole area acts as one complex for physical education, as well as an expansion of the offices that would happen in this location for it. The thrust of the academic expansion is a 2-story addition, because Adams right now, has 2 stories on this back wing. Most of this is a 1-story, this is a 2-story component, but currently that 2nd floor is not barrier-free accessible. There's no elevator in this building. So one of the things that's a very nice fit with this, building this as a 2-story, is that we're able to get in barrier-free toilets as well as an elevator. It will be connected on not only the 1st floor, but the 2nd floor. So all of a sudden that whole area is now connected, and you can see we also have another circulation flow for students at Adams with the And you can see for the most part, we're adding a lot of classrooms. We're also adding some science labs at this location. And we also have a music orchestra room in addition to adding the auxiliary gym in the front there. James Madison, which is an intermediate elementary school. This is the school that probably has the smallest multi-purpose room in the district. So its grades currently are 3 through 5. So when you're trying to get older, bigger kids, you know, it's not the small little kindergarten, first grader, or second grader squeezed in there. You're talking about slightly bigger size. It really is very, very much pinched. So one of the things that this school desperately needed was to have another multi-purpose room in the way of a gym being added. This school has space. It has enough space for the wing, so we're able to add it in the back here. And you can see it's a one-story school. This addition is 1 story. We have the gym oriented at this part so it really can work around the existing macadam play area. We'll have a separate lobby so there are events and things. Now it's important for this gym to serve the entire campus because on this campus you have the FDR, you have Roosevelt Pre-K. You also have obviously James Madison Primary School. Neither of those 2 schools really have a gym with a stage, with a space that they have to go off-site for any kind of functions like that. This now will serve as a resource, literally, and that's one reason why we're showing these buildings, is that this is going to be a resource for the entire campus. So it's a really good investment from that perspective with it. Also in that wing, we'll be building the 2 music rooms, so taking them out of trailers and other components in here. And right now, these are labeled as 3rd grade classrooms, but they could be 3rd grade, 4th grade, or 5th grade, depending on how the principal wants to use it. But it's a cluster by the grade of classrooms that will be going in here. Some offices, small group instruction, and toilets. So it's could be a nice, quiet, self-contained wing in the back of the building. In terms of, let's see, did I go the right way? Yeah. This just shows it in the color. And you can see a little bit more detail on the gym size, how it would work with the lobby at this point, the full-size stage, and the stage is now, you know, has direct access to the music rooms. So you can really see how events and performances and other co-curricular activities can nicely happen in this wing. And this can be used on an extended, you know, hours and day period without interrupting or affecting the rest of the school. So that was one reason why it's selection on the location. The existing multi-purpose room will be enhanced and expanded. We're actually taking over the storage area and building a new kitchen and storage for it to get that extra square feet that doesn't quite fit right now in this building. For Lincoln Elementary School, this is probably the school that is the most pinched with the number of classrooms that it's missing in terms of what its needs are. It has 4 trailers that aren't shown in this picture, but that literally we will have to accommodate because we're going to have to move these trailers out of the way. The idea is to really kind of do some construction strategies of some off-site construction so that we can basically try and bring pre-engineered components so that it will have a very quick construction time on certain key sites for that to facilitate that happen. What we're planning to do in this purple again is that the gym that it desperately needs, renovating the existing multi-purpose room into a cafeteria, changing some things with the office, some additional spaces here. And for the primary, we're adding really primary classrooms. We're sizing them for the kindergarten with self-contained. They could be used for first grade, but they really are a cluster of classrooms. Altogether, this is adding 9 classrooms. The other thing that is the most targeted in this particular site is the circulation. Right now, this is totally inadequate for the number of buses and for the congestion that happens on the site. So as you can see, we're more than doubling the length and circulation and adding parking. To do that, we actually will have to move and relocate the play area that currently sits right here. But this is also desperately needed at Lincoln School as a part of the investment to it. And you can see with the blue, these are the large primary classrooms clustered together with their toilets and self-contained. And then we have this area that can stand with the lobby and the use of it. Curricular, we have the parking coming in here, so this can really be used for off hours, as well as enhancing the safety, security, the access, and the functionality of what's happening in the main offices up front. Oh, I should mention, we also have a corridor link going in. Talk about circulation and making links. We will be building a link here, so basically this whole building circulates like, you know, kind of two donuts put together, or a figure eight, so that you have the circulation inside the building, no one going outside as you currently do with the trailers. And finally, Marshall. Marshall also had a need for additional classrooms. It luckily did get its second addition, so it has two multi-purpose rooms, a gym with an area as well as the cafeteria, so it didn't need that for that component. But it did need more classrooms, and it basically needed, it probably has the most compressed entry into the office of any of the schools, so it really needed some strengthening of the addition, having a security point here, adding some office space and renovating some spaces in the front, and then adding classrooms in this component. And these, again, are primary classrooms, self-contained, both the special education as well as kindergarten, and this allows it to be, and linking it into the circulation system that exists. We now freed up, by getting new classrooms here, we're able to free up spaces that are currently pressed as classrooms so that you have a dedicated art and music, so all the elementary schools will have art and music, not on a cart, but actually being delivered inside the building. And you can see here that the classrooms, the layout will be creating a wider, better used courtyard in the center here, as well as the trailers get relocated and removed at the final plan, we'll be able to add and expand the parking and the circulation for the car drop-offs in front of the building. So those were really the plans. And then I know I went through pretty quickly, but one of these are things that can be detailed, but I hope I explained the reason why it's a series of additions, it's a series of renovations, it's a series of connecting links, and that's all that each school can operate to its fullest best with the best kind of resources and doing it as skillfully as possible. And with this, the idea is that we should be turning around the issues that are pressing against the district and really kind of reverse that with the idea that we're adding the classrooms, we're renovating for the future, we're going to have the more modern furniture and flexibility and movement in the classrooms, so changing that scenario, increasing property value, getting it back so your home is worth that much more, businesses can thrive and continue to thrive, there'll be no loss in community growth and development and revenue within that for the community, as well as really having those issues with overcrowding, discipline, security, really taken care of with those renovations. And I just wanted to have, I guess, a little help on this one maybe in terms of what happens if the referendum doesn't pass. And maybe, I don't know if Gail or Jen are going to come up and talk about that, because there is a consequence that's going to happen. If we're just telling you that you're out of space now, and you have thousands more kids that you have to provide for, what happens if it's not supported?
The question isn't whether we can afford the referendum. It's what would happen if we don't? What is going to be the effect on our kids? We're going to have loss of educational opportunities. I just had the chance to visit Mount Olive School District to see their STEM program in action, and the innovative and creative spaces that they've developed for these students as far as science, technology, engineering, and math. We're falling behind. Pressure to add more trailers. Trailers are a Band-Aid. We're having students walk outside through the weather, and not to mention issues of school safety. We want our students safe, we want to secure our entrances, and we want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to ensure that. Adverse impact on overcrowded classrooms. We talked about that through the presentation. The smaller the class size, the more we're meeting the needs of our students. Continued use of programs on a cart. Friends of mine who are teachers in the district, that's how they're delivering instruction. They're delivering instruction by using a cart and pushing into classes. There's so much that they're not able to do because they don't have their own space. This is a big one, and this is one that we really need to spread the word on, is the idea there's going to be added pressure to redistrict school boundaries. We talked about schools that right now we have paramount needs. We need to increase the space in order to improve instruction. And if we can increase space, we're going to have to consider a redistrict. Use of hallways and closets for instruction. We showed pictures of some of those spaces that we're using to deliver targeted, individualized instruction. Our John Adams Library is currently being housed in a closet. Overcrowded circulation and assembly spaces, not to mention our cafeterias where students barely have room to eat. consolidation and elimination of programs, particularly the elective programs. And those are the programs that are really preparing our students for life in the 21st century and for the jobs that they're going to have when they leave, or the post-secondary training that they need right after high school. And finally, the last option might be double sessions or extended hours at the high school, where we see some sort of schedule where one school is going in the morning and another is going in the afternoon, or some sort of block that's going to better meet the student's need. So right now, we really need to make a decision. We need to plan for our students' future, and we need to make the right decision for them.
Great, thank you, Jen. And we wanted to say, just to remind you, and that's one reason why we're structuring this bond for 30 years, the idea that it's not just one generation, but multiple generations that'll be sharing the burden. That's how school construction is done. We didn't invent how schools construction is done. This is the rules of living in New Jersey. Is it the best? No. Other states have much better programs. They are countywide supported. They have aid coming back. That's not how New Jersey operates. It is a burden on homeowners and on taxpayers, but this is how we have to still operate within those rules in New Jersey. But we're trying to think, what can we do to try to make sure that we take advantage of any kind of aid that's available from the state, the debt service aid. There's even programs associated with the Board of Public Utilities that has to do with energy efficiency. We will take advantage of every incentive, every grant, and every debt service that we can to try and offset those local costs, as well as building smart. I didn't talk about green sustainability. That is a charge from the district, from the board. We want healthy, productive facilities. We want facilities that really are energy efficient. We want the money going into programs and not into fuel. That's really bottom line. We want to conserve water. We want to teach our students and make the buildings a 3D classroom so that you can actually see these principles in action. And that's one of the things that we do as designers. Is that's the fun part for us, is to make it so that you have that available, so students are learning not only in the space, but they're learning from the walls, from the floors, from the features that are in the building. That's what you can do in new construction. And we also wanted to make sure that the public was fully informed not only on the need, but also what the real costs are going to be. So that's why we were talking about getting that tax calculator and informing how to find your assessed value. What do you look on that tax bill? Get a picture of it, circle it, show you that's the number you put into the tax calculator for your thing. And for qualified seniors, there are state rebates in terms of holding down taxes. So we'll make sure that information or the link to the state site is there so that they can pursue that component. We want to make this an affordable plan, and because it's such a necessary plan. And I mentioned I do have the numbers per building. This is how the 189.5 gets divided up. You can see most of the 76 million for J.P. Stevens, 57 million for Edison High School, 16 for the Madison Intermediate, 15, about 16 for John Adams, and then 8 for Marshall, that's the smallest addition, and another close to 16 for Lincoln. So you can see it really reflects the number of classrooms and the amount of space being touched reflects in the construction, so there's no surprises there. But we'll have additional information online for that component for those that really want to dive into the details of the costs. One of the things that we wanted to say is that we did the what if it doesn't get passed, well, what if it does get passed? What are the plans for that in terms of the action plan for implementing the construction? And because it is a large referendum and it's being touched at so many sites, it's going to take several years to basically get it online and do it. There's a period that's called the design. You have code reviews, code analysis, and approvals, that process that has to happen, and then you have construction. The best thing that happens is actually working with the district in terms of strategies for managing the whole ball of wax, in terms of bid packages, things we're going to target, and in particularly the effective use of summers, because a lot of the interior renovations can only happen during the summer without impacting the school. New additions can be kind of fenced off and go on year-round. And often one of the strategies is having the new additions go first, so you have the swing space so you're able to renovate. And that's really what we wanted to capture in this slide. We know safety security is paramount in any school, so that's a big part of planning this. the idea of having phased construction, targeting some of the construction to be modular off-site. We have strategies for saving money and bundling, which areas you might have capital work that's targeted and packaged together so that somebody is just renovating this type of space at 3 schools very effectively and efficiently. That's all will be worked out with the district. We have to manage and separate access and deliveries for construction. If you think parking and access is tough now, just wait until there's a construction site. So we have to manage and create new entryways that are going to be temporary. There'll be gravel entryways for the construction vehicles, so they're not taking over the space of the parents and the buses that have to happen on the school site. And as I mentioned, that idea of creating breathing room for the district in terms of, oh, I went too fast, wow. For that. And for the last thing, I'm going to have Margaret come up here because we're going to talk a little bit about what are the communications components. And let me get back to where we are. And here's everything that you see tonight. A lot of the information is going to be on a website. And Margaret, if you want to bring us home.
My pleasure, Jean. A brighter Edison, a seat for every child. What we hope that we presented to you this evening is a way to make an informed decision for December 10th. So there's a lot of information in all of these slides, a lot of numbers, a lot to digest. So what you can do is there is a website up right now called abrighteredison.com. There'll be videos posted on there. These presentations tonight and tomorrow night, we're going to combine into one cohesive presentation. And for any of your friends that were not able to join us tonight or tomorrow, it'll be visible to them. This PowerPoint presentation that was chock full of numbers and data and very important information for people to peruse, that will also be up on that website. Additionally, I'd like to point out that we have some other information available to the public coming up besides today and tomorrow. The week of November 11th, we're going to be scheduling another information session based upon what we see today and tomorrow. What's a perceived need? What do we have to tweak? What is some other information that the public may be in need in? That meeting, our team meeting is on Thursday, correct? And we're all going to put our heads together and see what is it we need to do for that week of November 11th, the week of the caucus meeting for November, which is November 20th. We'll have some information available then, and certainly people that have come to information sessions maybe can reflect back and have a few questions. We'll give you another opportunity to ask those questions, and then anything else to be determined into the future. As people come up with questions during the course of a workday or at night when you're back at home visiting the website, abrighteredison.com, and a question strikes you, the person to whom you can reach out, because it's always good to have a name with a face, would be Ms. Polakowski. She will be anxiously waiting to receive all of those emails from all the residents of Edison. And finally, the final piece that we have scheduled is on social media. There'll be a variety of information available in a variety of ways. So thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. We hope that this helps you into the future and able to make the right decision. And final words, don't forget to vote on December 10th. We're going to have some concluding remarks and questions from the audience now. Thank you, Jean.